How's it going, everybody? Welcome to We Do Tech. Now, Ryzen 3000 has been out for some time now, along with the X570 platform, but finally we have the new B550 platform as well for more mid-tier to entry-level systems. So if you are holding out to save a couple of bucks for all this time now, then this is now the time to pair up with a new Ryzen 3000 system. So firstly, the B550 motherboard that we are going to check out here on this channel. It is the ROG STRIX B550-E from ASUS. But now don't worry, we are also going to take a look at the ASUS B550 Tougher Gaming soon as well. So subscribe for that if you want to go for something a bit more on the entry level side. So starting off with pricing, the B550E is retailing for around $250 on Amazon or around 6,500 Rand here in South Africa if you can find stock currently. Now, as for the design, you do get a full black color scheme on the PCB and covers with some RGB, of course, on the IO cover. The B550 platform still features the AM4 socket. However, currently at launch, they do not support Ryzen 2000 series CPUs and earlier processors or the Ryzen 3000 series APUs. It might be possible to add that later on in the future through a BIOS update like they did do with the X570 and B350 platforms to support Ryzen 3000. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see if that's going to happen because there is some limitations on the available space on the motherboards for updates to support all of the generation of CPUs. I mean, we have gotten through a few generations of CPUs so far, but you'll most likely anyway, if you're going to go for a new motherboard, you'll go for a new CPU as well. You won't probably pair it up with an older CPU, so that shouldn't be a problem. But now moving on to some overclocking on this board, I did pair up the B550E with the Ryzen 3600X and I ran some Cinebench benchmarks with Precision Boost Overdrive enabled and then also a manual overclock of 4.3 gigahertz at 1.375 volts, where we did see that there was a nice increase in performance there just with the manual overclock applied. But with that, VRMs was also a big priority here. The B550E uses a 14+2 power stage with a Digi Plus ASP2006 BMW controller and a 14 MPS MP86992 co-packed MOSFET power delivery system. Now, all of that just means that there is some pretty nice VRM setups on this board. And as for temperatures, from just my benchmarks that I've used so far, and combining that with the HW Info's beta version 6.27, to find out what the temperatures was actually at, it did show that these temperatures never went above 38 degrees on a 30-minute IDA stress test, which is really good. Now, that is with the beta version. I'm not exactly sure if that is entirely correct. They do have a updated version that's coming out a bit later, so we'll have to see there. But if that is the case, then these VRMs will be able to handle most likely the Ryzen 7 series CPUs, and then also maybe even the Ryzen 9 if you wanted to pair it up with a B550 board. The E will be able to handle that with a decent amount of overclock as well. Now moving on to a memory, you do get 4 dual channel DIMMs that support up to 128 gigs of DDR4 memory, running up to 4600 megahertz. But also for the next generation AMD Ryzen Pro processors, it can go up to 5100 megahertz for your memory, which is pretty high. Now, plus you do get also ASUS's Optimum 2 that reduces crosstalk between the DIMMs for lower latency. But now, just like their bigger brother, the X570 platform, the B550 boards do support the somewhat new PCI Express Gen 4 standard, which on paper delivers double the available bandwidth of a PCI Express 3.0. Now, as for this board, you do get 2 PCI Express 4.0 16X slots with a ASUS safe slot design to increase durability of the slots, especially if you are going to plan to pair it up with some very beefy cards. Then you do also get another 16X slot at the bottom, but this is only a Gen 3 and running at 4X speed. After that, you do also get 2 PCI Express 3.0 1X expansion card slots. This is where you'll probably see one of the bigger differences between the B550 and the X570 platform, with the X570 mostly featuring PCI Express 4.0 slots across the board. If you wanted to, you can also cross a Fire and SLI with the B550E, supporting both of them. Just to mention, the bottom 16X slot does share bandwidth with the 2 1X slots. So if you are planning to use the bottom 16X slot, it will disable the other 2 1X slots. Now, as for storage, the B550E's top M.2 slot is a PCI Express 4.0 slot, so you'll be able to get that really high speeds out of that slot. However, the bottom one is only a Gen 3 for more standard, slower SSDs. But both of them do feature the extremely long 22-110 size M.2 SSDs. Both of these slots do also feature an aluminum heat spreader to help keep the SSDs cool, because again, that PCI Express 4.0 ones can get quite a bit toasty. Along with that, you do also get 6 SATA 3 ports. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that if the bottom Gen 3 M.2 slot is occupied, the SATA ports 5 and 6 will be disabled. Now, unlike most of the X570 boards, the B550 boards do not seem to feature any external fans on the chipset to help keep the temps cool. It wasn't a problem in my testing, but it does seem that this is one of the bigger differences between the X570 and B550 platforms. The reason for that is mostly to do with the X570 having a lot more Gen 4 connections that also runs off the CPU and then the chipset, whereas on the B550 platform, the Gen 4s only run off the CPU and not the chipset, so you don't need that extra cooling to help keep the chipset cool. All of the Gen 3s runs off the chipset. Then moving on to I/O, you do get again the very nice pre-installed I/O shield, which is just a lovely thing to see. On the I/O shield, you do have your BIOS flashback button that can be used to update your BIOS with a USB port just located below it. You also do get 4 USB 2.0 ports, 3 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, one of them being a Type-C, a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, which is also great to see on some of these more mid-tier boards as well. For display connections, you do have an HDMI version 2.1 and then a DisplayPort 1.2 for your Ryzen APUs. For your wireless connectivity, you do have Wi-Fi 6 and then also Bluetooth 5. Lastly, for your audio, you do have the Supreme FX S1220A codec, and surprisingly enough, on this board, you don't get a SPDIF out port, you do get a USB-C audio out. So that was kind of something interesting that I've never really seen on other gaming motherboards. So that's maybe something that we'll see a lot more in the future. Maybe them replacing actually SPDIF out, moving entirely to USB. That would actually be a really nice thing to see and just help with the USB name of universal. Then as for power, the B550E does have the standard 24-pin power for your motherboard and then an 8+ 4-pin for your CPU, which will be enough to supply plenty of power for even your Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 9 CPUs. Then just some other features and connections on the board. You do have your Q code and Q LEDs to help figure out if something has gone wrong with your post. You do get 6 PMW connections for all of your fans and your cooling. You do get 2 USB 2.0 headers, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 10 gigabit connection, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 1 5 gigabit connection, and then also a Thunderbolt header. Then as for your RGB, you don't have a too crazy RGB going on this board. You do have some lighting on the I/O cover with the ROG I, and then also on the chipset cover. Along with that, you do get 2 5-volt addressable RGB Gen 2 headers, and then 2 12-volt RGB headers. But that's pretty much it for my review of the ASUS ROG STRIX B550-E. A pretty decent board. Now, it is a bit more on the higher end side of the B550 platform. For most people, I might even say, but rather go for some of the X570 boards, just because you might get a bit more out of that. Maybe the ASUS tough variants there, but the B550E is definitely still a very good board if you want to go for that. I wouldn't say it will have a problem running even Ryzen 7 or even Ryzen 9 CPUs. I'm not too sure of that. I don't have a Ryzen 9 to actually test it on with, but possibly it does look that the VRMs should be able to handle that. Maybe just a power delivery might be, because again, the Ryzen 9 does draw quite a bit of power. Other than that, it's just a really good board. Just again, a bit on the pricier side for the B550 platform. But again, like I said before, the ASUS TUF B550 is also coming out soon. So we're gonna take a look at that. And you do even have the Prime version as well if you want to go even cheaper. But that's pretty much it. A big thanks to ASUS of Africa for sending the board over for review. If you want to get it for yourself, I will leave links in the video description if you can find a stock currently, because of a little bug that's going around. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this review, please like, share, comment like always, and then I will check all of you guys next time. Cheers, guys.